We are a public agency, and we offer a variety of services to at-risk youth throughout the Hampton Roads area, everything from prevention services all the way through treatment services that include both residential and non-residential programming. So non-residential being things like in-home counseling for youth and families, substance abuse programs. Our residential services include group homes that can be used as an emergency shelter for youth, also some long-term group homes, placements on average of 4 to 6 months that would assess and then address the issues of the youth and the family, everything directed towards the goal of reuniting the youth with their family with the skills and abilities they need to be successful back in the community and back in the home.
So one thing that the superintendent at the detention center said was that what they realized, you know, what has helped these incarceration numbers go down is that not everyone needs to go to jail. And
Right.
my understanding that you guys help find other alternatives with the group homes and things like that, or at least work with them once they're there.
Right. What we do is we offer a continuum of services wherever the youth is. And one of the transformational efforts of the Department of Juvenile Justice is to put a valid assessment tool in place to really determine which kids are a risk to be in the community, risk to reoffend, and which ones are not. And when you look at the evidence clearly shows that you should put your focus on the youth that are the highest risk to reoffend. And it actually shows that the youth who are least at risk to reoffend should receive the least amount of services, and in some cases no services. So following in that trend, we're able to go in with the assistance of the court service units, the probation officers and parole officers, assess where the youth is using the WAVY, which is their primary assessment tool now, which is that valid evidence-based assessment that I mentioned, and then get the right services in place for the youth based on what their risk assessment reveals.
Okay, and so the past couple of years, I mean, there's been a dramatic decrease, I should say, region-wide.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen that, and
Yes.
what you've done, and what do you think's led to that?
I think the reduction is a direct response to the transformational efforts at DJJ. I think the department has moved away from a punitive approach to working with youth to more of an approach that's based on evidence-based practices and what truly works, what the research and data shows works. And that is not involving youth in detention or in services that don't need to be there. Focus your efforts on the prevention, and then focus your efforts on the ones that have demonstrated through that valid risk assessment that they're in the most of need of services. And the research shows that giving them the services that are evidence-based, research-based, has the good outcomes, that's going to result in the reduction in the recidivism that I think we're starting to see now that the transformation effort has been in place for going on 3 or 4 years.
And what do you guys base the success on?
Well, we set up individualized treatment plans for the youth when they come in, and they participate in setting up their goals and objectives along with the goals and objectives of their family, the counselor, the probation officer, or social worker. And and then we put those services in place and help them towards achieving those goals. And I lost complete track of my thought there. Okay. What was the question again?
I was talking about what you guys rate your success off of,
Okay.
and then you were talking about the individual.
Right, so we rate our success on the achievement of their goals and objectives while they're receiving services through our agency. And then the big goal that everybody looks at is recidivism. So if we're providing services that help that youth to gain the knowledge, skills, and abilities necessary to go out and be a part of society in a pro-social way, and they don't recidivate, then that's kind of the ultimate success, is that they go out and they're successful in their lives. But in terms of the data and the numbers, definitely recidivism is one of them, and then the accomplishment of their goals and their objectives while they're in treatment services with us is another measure of our success.
And I mean, how does this look different than what was in place 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Well, again, in my opinion, I would say 5 to 10 years ago, the approach was more punitive in that I think the overall guiding philosophy at that time was kind of a law and order perspective. And don't get me wrong, I believe in holding youth accountable for their behavior. That's part of what can be successful in your treatment approach. But I think the approach was more punitive in that way, where the thought was, well, if we can just remove them from the community will be safe, and we've fixed everything. The problem is that those youth grow up in the correctional facilities. They don't learn the skills and abilities, the social skills, the problem-solving skills, all of the things that they need to really successfully progress from being an adolescent into adulthood. And they come out, they don't have those skills, and they revert back to what they knew before they went in, or they're actually in with youth who have higher criminogenic needs than they do, and they end up picking up bad traits that they take out of detention or corrections back into the community. So that's kind of a lose-lose approach. You've really got to have a balance between holding the youth accountable for their behavior, keeping the community safe, and also addressing the treatment and rehabilitation needs of those youth.
Talk to me about your reentry programs. There's one that works with an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about that.
Well, we actually have two programs. As Andy mentioned earlier, the reentry program started under a grant that we partnered with the Department of Juvenile Justice on through the Second Chance Grant Act. And the reentry program was set up following some best practices that we and the Department of Juvenile Justice have identified over the years of working with youth. And the goal of the reentry program is to start working with the youth at a minimum 90 days before they're released from the juvenile center, making sure that we have a good plan in place, making sure we've developed a therapeutic rapport with the young man or the young lady, and putting all the important documents together, everything from their Medicaid information to their driver's license or state ID, Social Security card, birth certificate, making sure they have all of those things in place. And then once that youth transitions back out into the community, making sure that they have the resources they need to be successful. So someone who can help them with housing if they need it, employment services, job readiness, independent living skills, social skills, whatever supports that they may need based on that individualized treatment plan that I mentioned, to give them the supports that they can be successful when they re-enter the community. Most oftentimes, youth who have been incarcerated for a long period of time really come out severely lacking in decision-making skills and social skills. And you know as well as I do that when you come out and you're lacking those skills, it's really easy to get yourself in trouble again. If a person in authority approaches you and you don't have the social skills to handle the situation appropriately, then you can just get yourself deeper into hot water.
Talk to me about a success story. I mean, is there someone that you guys have worked with before they got out of jail and, now, or detention center, I should say, and now has made something of themselves and been able to make that transition?
Well, we've had a number of success stories over the years, but I can share one that I have personal knowledge about. Was a young man who was very heavily involved in gangs in the Virginia Beach area years ago. He came out of juvenile corrections to the apartment living program. He was an active participant in our services. He wanted to change. He wanted to do something different. And he was able to get a job while he was with us. He actually ended up getting a car that was donated through our foundation. So when he left our program, he left with a car, he left with independent living skills, he left with 2 jobs. He had about $3,500 in the bank that he had saved. And just a few years ago, 2 years ago, he reached out to me through my wife's Facebook page and wanted to reconnect and just let me know how much the apartment living program had meant to him. And in effect, he basically said the apartment living program saved my life, because if I'd have come out of juvenile corrections back into my home environment, I would have went straight back in with the gang, because that's all that I knew. That gang was my family, and that's all that I knew, and I would have reverted back to that. He said, but because I had another opportunity and because I had people who cared about me and wanted to help me change, I was able to do that. So now he's married, he has 2 kids, he owns his own home, he's a manager at a restaurant, and is living the good life.
And so when you're saying the apartment living assistance, are you guys just talking about helping them find an apartment to live in, or what is that? So
the apartment living program that we have in Virginia Beach is actually an entire building that we have with 4 units, 2 2-bedroom condominiums, and 4 2-bedroom condominiums in the building. And the youth that are leaving juvenile corrections, that are coming back into the community, that have the very least, the ones that don't have a home to go to, that would otherwise be homeless when they came out, they don't have family, they don't have resources. This program was reopened specifically to serve those youth. So they're able to come out of juvenile corrections, go to apartment living. They have a roof over their head, they have clothing, they have a food allowance. We usually have them a job within a matter of days. I would say that 95% of the time the youth have a job within the first week, and probably some by the next day have a job available